All right. So at this point, everybody in America knows that Donald Trump has been arrested, and Republicans are not taking this too well. I mean, there has been a bunch of coping, a bunch of just psychotic breakdowns. Charlie Kirk had one, or as I like to call him, Charles Kirkland Jr. He had an absolute meltdown, which I'm thinking about talking about after maybe this video. But for this video, I want to touch on Fox News because Tucker Carlson has to have somebody completely unhinged. Now, keep in mind, Tucker Carlson doesn't even like Trump. We now know because of the Dominion lawsuits that basically everybody at Fox News knows they're lying. They don't care. They're doing it for views, they're doing it for money. And Tucker Carlson hates Trump. He called him a demonic force. You can look it up. But because Tucker Carlson knows where his money is made, he has to placate to the bottom of the barrel, which is his prime viewer base, because they are primed up to really believe anything, and they are in a cult. This cult is Donald Trump's cult. So Tucker Carlson brings on an absolute character. Jason Whitlock. So let's go ahead and play this clip. It's about 3 minutes. I'll comment in between. Let's see what my main man, Justin Whitlock, has to say.
So what did you think of yesterday?
Tucker, it took me to the Bible, quite honestly. All times are biblical, but man, this really seems like we're in some end times here. And it really took me to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14 through 18. Verse 14, the Bible talks about you can't have partnership. The righteous can't have partnership with the lawless. And that's not me calling Trump the most righteous person in the world, but anybody looking at this knows that Alvin Bragg and the Democratic and the leftists are lawless. They don't believe in fair justice, equal treatment under the law.
Now, keep in mind, these are the same exact people. When Trump first initially ran, they were screaming, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. Then they were screaming about Hunter Biden. Then, So after they were saying lock up Hunter Biden, they then went to January 6th, where they proceeded to scream hang Mike Pence. So the idea that Republicans care about law and order is absolutely absurd. These people don't really care about law and order. They really care about getting their agenda done and winning. That's all that really matters to them.
They don't believe in that. And so you can't have partnership with them. And then if you go down to verse 17, Paul talks about God's instruction that you got to come out from among them and separate. That's what God instructed. And that's where I think we actually are, Tucker, is these guys are so far removed from the truth, so far removed from any of the values that made this country great. We can't really have partnership with them. And my mindset went to secession, that we have to separate. We have to come out from among them.
Okay. So, like, the best part about this is Jason Whitlock goes on to talk about how these people are so far removed from the truth. And the entire time, Tucker Carlson has to sit there with this blank, confused face because Tucker Carlson knows that Jason Whitlock is a moron. He knows. We have evidence that Tucker Carlson knows that the person he is bringing on is an absolute lunatic. And Tucker Carlson has to sit here and nod his head like he did when Jason Whitlock goes on to talk about how we should possibly, I assume what he means is the red states or the MAGA states should succeed from the U.S. Tucker Carlson has to nod his head, but in reality, after the show is over, he's going to go back and text his colleagues about how crazy the guy he is talking to is right now.
They're so unrighteous, they're so unclean that, finding common ground is impossible with people who think men can become women,
Oh, speaking of clean, real quick, there's areas in like these red states that were compared to third world countries.
who told us, hey, look, we just want two men to be able to get married, and there's no slippery slope. And that was a lie. And we've seen the slippery slope. Now it's drag queens reading books to kids. Now it's taking kids to drag queen shows. Now it's mutilating kids and infecting them with gender dysphoria and using it as an excuse to cut off their breast or cut off their penis. You can't.
Now, there's just so much lying going on there. The idea that someone's taking a hatchet to your kid's junk is absolutely false. Another one that they love to use is, oh, well, they're not cutting off the junk, they're doing chemical castration, which they normally refer to puberty blockers. Now, puberty blockers isn't chemical castration because they want to put the idea in your head that these puberty blockers is some form of like top secret liquid that your 13, 14-year-old drinks and their dick shrivels up like a raisin. That's not happening. And going back even further to what he was talking about, how it is a slippery slope. Drag queens have been around for decades, centuries actually. And this was all before gay marriage was legal. Um, we had drag queens back in the 60s, 50s, and I can assure you, gay marriage was not popular back in the 1950s. It wasn't popular in the 1960s either, but drag queens were still around. So the idea that, like, oh, we just want gay people to get married, and now all of a sudden you have drag queens coming out of the woodworks. No, it's absolutely nonsense what he's talking about. Absolute garbage.
Have peace. You can't have partnership with these people. There are so many lies stacked on top of lies, from the whole Black Lives Matter, George Floyd deal, and oh, the police are just out indiscriminately killing black men and it's so dangerous because of the police. That's all a lie and everybody knows it. We can't find common ground with people who have no respect for the truth, no respect for justice, no respect
Oh,
for
the irony
fairness.
here.
We have to think about going our separate ways. And whether that's through secession or whether that's through some sort of national divorce, it has to be on the table, because you just can't find common ground with people this delusional who think that they're God and they can make up the rules. And so I don't see a pathway forward for those of us that respect America's founding, have traditional values, have a faith in God. We got to separate. And
Yeah, so he's calling for succession, and it's just the irony of this guy talking about the lies that are spewed by the left. Meanwhile, this is a prime example of somebody who is I like dangerously suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect, because this is the guy that has basically went away with every lie that Donald Trump has talked about, or maybe Jason Whitlock is in on it. Maybe him and Tucker Carlson are both in on it, and they know that their audience are the ones that will basically believe anything that comes out of the box or the internet or Tucker Carlson's Twitter account, even though it is laid out now. We know for a fact, it is a fact, that Fox News knows the election was not stolen, and they make fun of Trump's lawyers whenever they came out, like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani. Those people were crazy. Tucker Carlson talked about how they were crazy. Lauren Ingram agreed that they were crazy. Sean Hannity also was in on it. But they're going to spew the lies regardless, because it prints out. It just prints out dollars.
and I don't care how it's done, but I just don't see a way to coexist with people this far removed from truth.
Yeah. So You know, absolute nut job language. We've heard this from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She talked about a national divorce. This guy just clearly says succession, and then he goes into the national divorce rhetoric. It's just overall dangerous stuff because while it is while it is funny because it is very stupid. Unfortunately, in this country, you have a lot of people that actually believe it, and when they buy into this stuff, it hurts the country overall. Now, keep in mind, even if there was a national divorce, states like California, New York would be perfectly fine. But states that wouldn't be fine, states like Alabama, they would collapse. States like Mississippi, it would collapse. States like Louisiana, it would collapse. We've seen Texas that can't even handle their own power supply right now because they get absolutely destroyed by the winners. So the idea that like Republicans would want a national divorce is absolutely absurd because the red states, like I talked about before, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, they get more from taxes than what they put in. States like California basically fund states like Alabama, states like Mississippi, etc. These like barren red states that are poverty stricken. So it would be an absolute nightmare for those states, and those people would find out very soon, unfortunately, that they would find themselves in a lot worse off. But here is what you get when you get these morons on Fox News that spread lies continually, and unfortunately, in this country, a lot of people eat it up and ask for more.